just giving you an overview tonight because I want to unpack it in the weeks coming. But what makes the false self so strong in keeping our identity as it has been is that it goes right back to the beginning in our lives. And right from early on, it has a history which is almost like a trajectory that it keeps us on. And the primary issue is around our feelings. Most of our choices are around feelings. Even our rational choices, we only usually make them when they feel good. Even if they're rational and they don't feel good, we tend not to respond. So feelings, I think, are the most powerful aspect of our internal metabolism. And that's mainly because our feelings are cellular interpretation of reality. Our feelings are recorded in our cells, in our body. So every cell in our body knows when you fear a dog coming at you, every cell in your body says run, and they all work together, and you jump a 6-foot fence and you're gone. And it's all in your cellular memory. It's not necessarily your mental memory. Your mind says no, but just tell him to go away. Your body says I'm out of here. So the cellular memory is so powerful, and because it's bodily, it has the power of the muscular metabolism at its disposal. Your body tightens up. You feel anxious and your stomach is in a ball, and you tighten up and you're sort of not comfortable. So that obviously affects whatever we choose, whatever we decide. So right from the beginning, in our mother's womb, we were formed with feelings. Feelings are hormones in the bloodstream, and in our mother's womb, we shared her blood, we shared her feelings. So right from then, we were programmed with feelings. We didn't know what they referred to then. After we were born, we started to make some connections. Oh, when this happens, I feel that. When that happens, I feel this. But basically, our emotional landscape was formed right in the womb, and it's been coming with us all our lives. So those feelings have a sort of they're like a database. They're like an emotional reference point. If I feel good about something, it must be okay. If I feel bad about something, there must be something wrong. I must do something different. So good and bad feelings tend to direct our choices by and large. I think largely. We might decide to run across country and start running and get a stitch and it's sore, and we'll keep running and go against the pain. But that mostly, if we don't like it, we don't do it, or we justify it. So the emotions are very strong in guiding ours. We've always done it this way. It's always felt comfortable this way. So why change now? And our body doesn't want to change because it's really habituated. So firstly, it's our emotional trajectory that we've been on. Secondly, with every emotion comes a set of assumptions. Because when we feel something, we look around and saying, well, why am I feeling that? And our brain starts to look for reasons and says, oh, it must be because I had that bad phone call at lunchtime and they told me I was lazy and, now I feel horrible and they spoiled my day. But the assumptions might be wrong. In fact, most of the assumptions in the early days of our feelings are even irrelevant then. We made assumptions because we didn't know what was really going on. And so those assumptions stuck because we had no way of checking them out. And the problem is those assumptions became beliefs, and those beliefs became beliefs that hold our life for what it is. So we might have had a handicapped sister, and mom was more involved with our little sister than with us, and the assumption might have been she loves my sister more than she loves me. She spends more time with her, less time with me, so my sister's favorite, I'm not a favorite. Now that must have been totally nonsense, but the sister might have needed more attention, but the child might have assumed that there was more love on that side. So the whole life trajectory might be my sister was more loved than I was. And the trouble with an assumption, when nothing changes it, when there's no way of corroborating it, it becomes a belief. And that belief becomes a life controller. Okay, so the belief, what are our beliefs? If you could unpack your beliefs and just say, what are the things that I believe about my life? You see, a lot of them come from way back then, and a lot of them weren't actually ever checked out. They were just circumstantial. They were creative imagination. They were assumptions that we made because we didn't know anything else. We might have heard a comment and taken it out of context. So most of the beliefs that actually control the way we live are based on very, very shaky assumptions. But the false self hangs on to those assumptions and takes them as true. And that's part of the problem. So, we might believe we don't have, we're not enough. A person who has low self-esteem, you can tell them 100 times they're fine. And they say, yes, but no, you don't know me. I'm not good enough. And from experience that they're good enough, but they'll tell themselves they're not good enough, and they'll believe themselves. They won't believe you. So we need to, in beginning to explore the false self, the basis of the false self's tenacity in terms of keeping our identity, we need to unpack some of the basic pillars of its existence. And the third one I want to mention is the narrative that we've developed over the course of our lives. If you try sometime writing a simple little fairy tale, a little story, just try it sometime. Write for one page, write a story, in the beginning, and then this happened and that happened. And a lot of the unconscious factors come out in the narrative, which are actually part of the beliefs of your life story. And we all have a narrative. We all have a way of holding our memory. Almost carries a river of memories and of intent. Of all the millions of memories we have, we remember only a certain sector of them. And that sector is the ones that actually create our life story, our life narrative. And you and your sister or brother will have a different life narrative. Okay, we're born in the same family to the same circumstances, and we make up a different story because we take different elements and put them together and get different conclusions. But that life narrative is what holds us, because that's what holds it. It comes with our feelings, it comes with our assumptions, it comes with our beliefs, it comes with the story. And so we have this whole trajectory behind us that is, this is the life I have. This is who I am. So going forward, unless I do some radical work on it, that's the same trajectory that's going to be there next year and the year after and for the rest of my life. Does that make sense? So we need to begin to take apart the pieces, not to destroy them, but to transform them, allow them to be transformed. Because when we look at our identity, the true self is the self that we're wanting to become. Why change? We talked just now about how hard it is to change, but why change? Well, we know deep in our hearts that life could be different. That the way we're living now isn't ideal. It's not. There must be more to life. And it's not just sort of hankering for something else. It's knowing that the way we're living now actually isn't optimal. And deep in our hearts, we know that there's something more that we could be doing and getting out. And this is exactly what God is wanting to lead us into, a more fulfilled and more abundant life. And so the way God sees our life, he sees it the same way we see it, but he sees what it can be, whereas we see what it is and can't be other. And so we almost need to have God's eyes in the view, and God's understanding, God's leading. And so God takes the same narrative. He doesn't cut our lives off and change it. He takes it and transforms it. That's why we never change. I will always be who I am. But as God works on me and works on you, that self that I am becomes transformed, becomes liberated, becomes freed from the binding assumptions and feelings that have kept me stuck, that so easily get us stuck and stop us changing. Does that make sense? So he doesn't want to sort of rub us out. He doesn't want to, he does make us a new person, but out of the same building blocks. I was saying to somebody the other day that all our life experiences are like creating building blocks. Remember when you used to have Meccano as kids?
Yeah.
You used to get all these strips of metal and lots of bolts and nuts and angles and things. And you could, make, it was like Lego, but metal. And you could make anything. And so all the life pieces we have are like the pieces of Lego, of Meccano. And God sees a different creation. And He can take the same pieces and use them in a much better way. We can take them in a better way. And not always make what we've always made because that's what we're used to making and that's how we think it has to be. Does that make sense? So we really are wanting to engage the false self, but in a friendly way, and say, it's okay. You can let go of some of the sort of things that you're hanging on for dear life. And begin to allow ourselves to actually open up and start to question and to explore and to dream and to wonder and to take risks and to take steps. But we need to do it in a way that is thought out. If you decided to do a music degree and get a doctorate in music, you wouldn't think it, you could do it in a weekend. You'd know it's a 4 or 6 year job, and you'd have to put a lot of effort into studying, into passing exams, into really working hard. And you'll get there, but it's hard work. Who was it? Malcolm Gladwell said it takes about 10,000 hours to get good at something, whether it's music or whatever. So if you want to change, it's possible, but you must want to change. You must have a commitment to yourself and to God's developing you into who He made you to be, and then put things in place so that you actually are working towards that rather than a sort of hit and miss. Oh, that sounds like a good idea. And next week, oh no, there's a show on I'd like to, or there's a video on I'd like to watch rather. And then it sort of fritters away because coming back, you will have lost something. That's why I was saying earlier, be careful of not taking the resistance seriously enough, because the resistance will overwhelm your desire to change. And you'll say, oh, well, it's useless. I can't change. It's like somebody who's tried 6 times to stop smoking and they say, oh, well, I give up. And growth in ourselves is also a precarious project. So we need to really be consistent. We need to commit ourselves to it, even when it feels difficult, when it feels uncomfortable. We need to, be willing to. Today I was speaking to somebody and saying, are you willing to face yourself? Are you willing to really just see who you are? Because that phrase, know thyself. Do we want to know ourselves? Do we want to see what's really going on? Are we really interested in developing a deeper self rather than just an external self like you would with a life coach who wants to maximize your potential but isn't really doing much about changing the whole life patterns that have shaped you and formed you and making you who you are? You have to win the false self over rather than fight it. You fight it, it just submerges and you won't get it, and 6 months later it'll come up and say, where? So you got to win it over and actually convince it that for its own well-being, it would be good if it actually slowly became the true self, which is what the object is. Not to try and, they say kill it, but kill it in the sense of take away its power over you, and rather enable it to transform into something which is much more appropriate, which is what we want actually to get to.